A disclaimer, please note that this workshop is not a substitute for therapy. It's for educational purposes only. We have a great staff. If that's it, by the end of this, if you think that therapy might something that would help you, we would like to help. Also, with anything, a subject such as this, which is very sensitive, we want to have everyone feel safe and supported. So just, when we comment or just, awareness of other people's feelings, and sometimes we don't know what other people have been through. So just sensitivity to that. Here's the title of our workshop today. Am I depressed or just sad? So we're going to start figuring out some of those things. Most of us feel sad, lonely, or depressed at times, and that's a normal reaction to some of life's struggles, right? Like sadness it's one of our many, many emotions that we have. But often that feeling of sadness can be overwhelming. It can present as physical symptoms. It can last for long periods of time. And here's one of the discriminators. If someone doesn't look like they're leading their healthy, active life, we're seeing a change. Something's going on, right? So when you're looking for that in other people, change is one of those things in mental health. This person used to be like this, and now they're like this. Maybe they're just sad, but wow, it's been a couple months. And with COVID, that's not a surprise. It's been going on for quite a long time. So it is a long time to have to live this way. So yes, it can be a little tricky to figure out which one it is. And the other thing with mental health, it's dynamic. We move through things. A lot of people get very nervous about having a mental health diagnosis. They get concerned about this label that's going to be assigned to them. One of the benefits, I think, not the benefits, maybe one of the pearls from COVID is we're talking a lot more about mental health. I think we're shedding some of the stigma. Certainly our young people have no qualms about saying, oh yeah, I go see my therapist, where, in previous generations, there was a lot of shame attached to getting help. So I feel very optimistic about that shift in asking for help. So some similarities, right? Sadness has several symptoms in common with an actual depressive disorder. And some of those would be insomnia, poor appetite, overeating, weight loss, weight gain, irritability, right? These are some of those little signs we're looking at. What's going to make the big difference on these immediately is how long they're going on. Does the person move in and out of that, or is this a constant state for them? Sadness tends to decrease over time and occurs in waves. And I love that way of thinking about it. The sadness kind of comes and goes. We can get distracted, we can feel fine, but then maybe something gives us a little trigger, we're remembering something, and then we're kind of sad again. The person might feel better, in certain situations with family, with friends, when they're feeling supported, they're not feeling that depth of sadness. Clinical depression, on the other hand, tends to be these keywords here: persistent and pervasive. Sometimes we think of the cartoon of the person with the big black cloud hanging over their head, and they just can't get out from underneath it. That would be, kind of more of a symptom of depression. So here's a whole list of things that we can look at in people. It can be a combination of these. They don't have to tick off all of these. And then sometimes we feel these, and like I said, it comes in waves. So I'll just go through them. Trouble concentrating, remembering details, making decisions, right? Those are also signs of stress. Constant fatigue, feelings of guilt, worthlessness, helplessness, pessimism, hopelessness. And I think you'd be hard pressed to find somebody during COVID that hasn't felt any of these. Anything that affects your sleep, too much, too little, those are signs. Restlessness, right? An inability to calm oneself. There's that loss of joy, loss of interest in things once pleasurable, right? You see people stop doing their hobbies. They stop doing the things that they used to be engaged in, and you'd see them smile. They kind of let things fade away. Overeating, undereating, Physical manifestations, right? Aches, pains, headaches, cramps that just won't go away, sometimes even after seeing a doctor, right? We know that there's such a strong connection between the mind and the body that if the mind, I'm going to throw in mind, body, and spirit, that if the mind and spirit are not feeling well, it's going to manifest itself in the body. The next one, great, digestive problems, right? That who hasn't ever had a tummy ache because they're nervous or upset? There's that connection between what's going on in the mind and spirit, and it's showing itself in the body. More persistent things, sadness, anxious, empty feelings, right? That you get this feeling and you just can't get a break from it. And then even more extreme, suicidal thoughts or attempts, right? Then it's getting, very, very serious. Anybody have any questions on this slide? No, we're good.
Where does dysthymia fit into this? Is that a mild depression? I got that diagnosis 15 years ago.
Yeah, we don't really, I don't use that one much anymore. It's a constant evolving change in labeling things. Every time the DSM comes out, we've got to like learn new things. The more we learn about mental health, the more we kind of like clump things together or spread them apart. I'm going to just jump in here because this is one of my favorites recently. Is most people have heard of PTSD, so post-traumatic stress disorder. We now have another diagnosis called post-traumatic growth. Like, who would have thought that you can go through trauma and come out sometimes stronger? So it's definitely evolving. So I'm going to take a little side trip here on grief. Grief is a great descriptor to me in the sense of when you're talking about loss, right? So most people, when they think of grief, they think of the death of someone, but we're constantly losing things, right? We're grieving. If we had a great day yesterday, we might be grieving yesterday. If our children are growing up and we miss having little kids in the house, we might be grieving that. So sometimes just to think about, why am I sad? Well, because things are changing, right? COVID's been a great example. People like, I used to get off the island every, at least twice a year. I can't do that anymore. I'm grieving my freedom. I used to see people in person. I'm grieving that physical contact. Where are my hugs, right? I'm feeling this sense of loss. As we get older, this is something we talk about with our older clients. There's a sense of loss, maybe of our youth, of our health, right? My body's changing. I'm not relating to the world that I used to, and that can make us sad. This line here was, I work with the Donna Project as well. This is one that comes up with the caregivers. We can have a loss of a loved one even though they're still physically here. So if you're a caretaker to maybe somebody who has dementia or Alzheimer's, right? They're still here, but they're not here. And that can be such a source of grief for people. Plans for the future, right? How many of us are just kind of waiting around? When's the pandemic going to be over, right? This sense of like my loss of control over the way I used to live. And I do a whole workshop on grief, but I'll give you the little mini version here. Is you'll see these are the 5 classical stages of grief. The first one, well, before I read them off, know that these are kind of our go-to list, but also know that there is no prescribed order. Just because you go through one doesn't mean you're not going to come back to it. You could be angry one day, depressed the next day, and back to anger the day after that. And there's no quote unquote normal way to go through grief, right? We all grieve in our own way. Some cultures, they have more prescribed ways. You hear of like widows dressing in black for a year, that kind of thing. But there is no, this is the right way or wrong way to do grief. So typically, like I said, it's not locked in stone here. There's a shock or denial phase, like how can this be happening? So if we think of COVID, I'm sorry?
This is this taken from Kubler-Ross, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross?
Okay. It sure is.
Yeah, yep. She's very right on. I love this. Yeah.
So I'm going to use COVID as our example. So in the beginning, there was this shock, this denial. How can this be? And none of us have ever lived through a pandemic before. And then we saw maybe some of our friends or family members get angry about this, right? I don't want it to be this way. This is impinging on my life. Think of all these school children, right? Like, I can't see my friends. I'm upset. The bargaining phase, it's kind of like deal making, right? Like, well, if I stay in my house for 2 solid weeks, this will be over and then it'll be okay, right? We're kind of doing these mixing apples and oranges don't go together. And that's our brain's way of trying to make sense of this. Like, what can I do in a situation where there's nothing for me to do? Fourth stage is depression, right? And that can last, like, again, no prescribed length of time. And the fifth is the one that we're trying to reach. We're trying to get to acceptance. And this can be confusing sometimes, like we accept something we're grieving over, and yet we find ourselves angry again. So again, it's not like once you hit acceptance, you're all good. Tim, the fact that you mentioned Kubler-Ross, they're talking now also about perhaps a sixth stage, which is called meaning making. That sometimes that we're looking, humans are meaning making creatures. We like to understand things. And sometimes that helps people, with their acceptance of this happened for a reason kind of thinking. Here's some causes of depression. COVID's an easy one to point to, but there's other things that compound why someone might be depressed. So we do know that there can be genetic components to depression. If there's a lot of family members that are depressed, that might be something to be self-aware about. We have something called diathesis stress, and I bring this up during genetics because we might be prone to something, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. So whether we're talking about a breast cancer gene or alcoholism in our family, just because we have a predisposition doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. And with good intervention, it doesn't have to happen, right? Brain chemistry imbalances, right? Some of us are just born certain ways. We are more prone to depression. Poor nutrition. That's one of my rallying cries. That's something to easily do something about, and we'll look at that more in depth later on. Physical health issues, back to the grieving loss of mobility, loss of our health, that can make us deeply sad. Drugs, one of the side effects for many drugs is feelings of sadness and depression. And so to have that awareness that when something's changing, to take a look at all these areas. Of course, stress is one as well, like when it gets just to be too much, right? Depression is one way of our brains of protecting themselves. I can't do any more of this. Couple others just to put in here. New medications and their side effects, right? This can be adding medications to your health regime, taking them away. And it just started pouring here. So if you hear that, I'm sorry. It's raining like crazy here in Aiea. So, these are the kinds of things like good communication with your doctor, that, we're trying something new and I'm noticing a change. I know a lot of times we get medications and they hand us, 5 sheets of paper, like possible side effects, and we don't look at it. And a lot of times, change in mood might be something until we get used to it. Or maybe that's the wrong medication for us. We need something that has not that side effect. So ask those questions. I've got a big old section here in vitamin B, and I'll tell you why. There was a study with the elder care home, and they just noticed like the rate of dementia had just spiked in this elder care home. And they brought a nutritionist in and they were analyzing their diet, and the people that lived there were very low in B vitamin. The quality of the food and the food that they were fixing for them was not giving them enough vitamin B. And once they added that to their diet, all of a sudden it was like everybody's waking up. So here's some things, and you can see how, people might not have enough vitamin B if you're trying to like eat a healthier diet. And here's some things like salmon, leafy greens. Maybe your digestive tract doesn't tolerate some things, or you're trying to stay away from, animal proteins. So there's got to be this awareness. If I'm not getting my B's through maybe ways that I used to, am I getting them other ways? Easy ways are like fortified cereals, fortified breads. A lot of times those will put enough B's into your diet that depression won't be a side effect. Okay, so I do believe that we shouldn't talk about a problem unless we can come up with a solution in the same workshop. I think that would be just too depressing. So whether you think you've got signs or symptoms of depression, or whether you're thinking of a friend or family member that does, what are some things we could do about it? Well, I like to start with the physical body. Get checked out by your doctor. And I put this slide up here because a lot of times people, we're scared of getting bad news. We're scared of what's going to happen if I ask this question. So here's some things. If you go to your doctor and you're saying, I went to this workshop and I'm having quite a few of these signs and symptoms, this is what your visit might look like. Your doctor's going to ask you, when you think this started. It might be 2 months after COVID. How long has it been? I've been feeling this way ever since. How severe is it? And that's that list of symptoms that you can look at. I'm having a hard time falling asleep. I'm having a hard time staying asleep. I just can't find any pleasure in anything. Nothing gets a chuckle out of me. I can't even, seeing people that used to make me happy, like I'm not feeling much. Does depression or mental illness, is that part of your family history? That's a great time to kind of look at like, oh, maybe I'm prone to this, right? I need to have that awareness. And then definitely use of any type of substance, drugs, alcohol, right? Those are definitely contributors to a change in a mental health status. Let's see, what else did I put on there? You'll also be asked if you've had similar symptoms of depression before, and if so, how it was treated. So if your doctor or previous doctor had success with a particular medication or therapy, they'd be like, hey, maybe we need to go back to that. Okay, so here's some of those, hopefully answering some of those questions. Medications and psychotherapy are effective for most people with depression. Now I'm a therapist, so I admit I am completely biased. I have a strong leaning towards therapy. Most therapists, we call it multimodal. We'll use more than one theory, more than one way. We don't believe in one size fits all. People are getting less and less afraid of medications, which I'm happy to see. Sometimes we just need to be on something to kind of get us over the bump while we're doing psychotherapy. I have extreme biases against medication without therapy. I don't think that's, I think when you get off the medication, you're just kind of back to where you were if you haven't done the work on like, how did I get here? What do I need to address? So your primary care doctor or psychiatrist can prescribe you medications. And sometimes, it's extreme, someone can't get out of bed. We need to get them something so that we can get them to a place, a level up that they can start doing some other work. So here's that: psychiatrists, psychologists, or other mental health professionals. There's lots of us with lots of different labels. Psychiatrists, yes, can prescribe. Psychologists, Tim, as you pointed out, that's kind of changing. We even have some RNs now that can prescribe certain things after patients have had a diagnosis. At the Samaritan Center, we do not have a psychiatrist. We do have nobody on staff that prescribes. So we are a therapy center. But many of my clients have a psychiatrist who prescribes, and then we're kind of working in tandem, right? We're trying to alleviate maybe some physical symptoms, or at least get to the point where we can do some work on the psychotherapy side. I think it was Judy. I just want to address here. I've had clients for over 4 years. I have clients I'll see maybe 3 times. We've worked out their issue. They feel good. Off they go. We have a whole spectrum of what people need. I have some clients I see every week, some every 2 weeks, some every 3 weeks, some do check-ins once a month. If you're my client, one of the first things you're going to hear me say the first time we meet is that you're the expert on your life. And I have some tools and experience, but I want to walk shoulder to shoulder with you and get you where you need to go. And, sometimes we have compounding things and it's just too hard to do alone. So please, reach out. I guess this is my good place too. Please don't be discouraged if you ever have a therapist and you're like, you know what, this just is not a good fit. This is not a good fit for me. Give it 1, 2, 3 sessions. A professional is not going to be offended by that. We're all different. We all click differently with different people. And if that's not your person, you just tell, like, you know what, I'm not going to come see you anymore, but I'm going to pursue therapy with someone else. And any professional will want that for you. We want you to have a good fit. Okay, here's our things that I can do, right? Let's get proactive about this. So whether you're having bouts of sadness or you do have depression, exercise, sleep, hydration, support systems, and therapy. And we're going to go into each one of those. So exercise, here we go. Releasing feel-good endorphins, right? These are chemicals in your brain that just enhance your sense of well-being. We know that the more you move, the more of these endorphins you release into your brain. I'm sure most people have heard of like runner's high. That's what they're talking about, right? These feel-good hormones that get released in your brain when you exercise. And you don't have to be a marathon runner to get the benefit of it. If you haven't exercised for a while and you decide, you know what, I'm going to walk for 20 minutes every day, you'll start feeling those brain boosting hormones right away. Exercise is also a great distraction. Obviously, my pictures here are in a pre-COVID area because no one's wearing a mask. But we get to see other people, right? Hopefully, as our numbers get better and better, exercise is a great way. Even if you're just seeing people, we're walking around with masks, but we know that there's other people out there in the world. We're not alone. There's other psychological and emotional benefits, gaining confidence, social interaction, and coping in a healthy way. I'm feeling really sad. I think I'm going to go for a walk. What a great tool to have in your tool chest. I do have choices. There's something I can do. Sleep. An inability to sleep, but also oversleeping are key signs of depression. It's kind of a chicken and the egg thing sometimes with sleep. Sometimes we get put on medications that are affecting our sleep, and now the lack of sleep is causing us to feel depressed, and round and round and round we go. So those are things that, to talk to your doctor about if that's a side effect that you're having. Let's see, inability to sleep that lasts over a long period of time is an important clue that you may be. So yeah, maybe, you're in a stressful situation. I've had a bad week of sleep, but now things have calmed down. I'm sleeping again. I wouldn't be worried about that. That's something you move through. But if we're talking like months, people for years have not slept well, sleep affects the depression, which affects the sleep. Big old section on hydration. Water, 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 water. Research shows that even mild dehydration can have an effect on your mood. It can affect your energy level and your ability to think clearly. So that's as near as your tap, right? Fortunately, we live in Hawaii where we can still drink the water right out of the faucet. Studies show that drinking water has a significant impact on alleviating depression and helping with concentration. I know I've had some issues with some of my older clients. They don't want to drink so much because they got to go to the bathroom more. But now we're back in this. This could be why you don't have any energy. This could be why you're having problems sleeping. Better to have to use the bathroom a little bit more and have, less headaches, a more elevated mood. So it's just kind of like, yeah, that's just part of it. Little caveat here on how much is enough. For most people, 6 to 8 glasses of water. We do get water through our food. You can kind of, not to be too graphic, I used to always tell my kids, you need to pee clear once a day, right? That lets you know that you're hydrated. But if you have congestive heart conditions, certain kidney diseases, that may be too much water. So if you have something like that, please talk to your doctor before you, significantly up your consumption of water. Support system. What's the support system? It's a group of people you can trust with for advice, get help, and support you in your daily life. I know a lot of people, when the churches were not open, this was huge for them to feel completely disconnected from their support systems. We've done a good job with Zoom and other, call trees and things like that. Still not the same as in person, but we're getting there. This would be another important, you have to cultivate your support system. So here we have your family, friends, work, volunteering, maybe you have hobbies, right? Not everybody's always available all the time. I find that with people that maybe just have that one best friend. Well, sometimes that best friend needs support, right? We need to have multiple people in our lives that that we can go to for help, but that can also lean on us. So how do they work? They relieve stress. It's not good to keep negative emotions inside, right? It's good to have a good ear. Sometimes we just need to vent, right? It's just a place where we can let it all hang out. Sometimes that's the difference between a friend and a therapist, right? Sometimes we kind of like couch our thoughts and our words with our friends. We don't want to burden people. It's a benefit of having a therapist. We're ready for any of it. Bring it. Your support system can help you with feelings of loneliness and isolation. I love this little part about being an introvert. Even introverts need connection. They might not need as much or as intense, but we still need connection. We're all human. And support systems, they give us that feedback, right? It's not only us asking to lean on others. It's nice sometimes to be leaned on and to know that we're valued and that we can help others. Well, there's that line. We often don't share our feelings with others because we don't want to burden our friends and family, right? So it needs to go somewhere. We don't want it manifesting in our body. We don't need, stomach aches, acid reflux, aches and pains in our joints because we're holding all this in. This is when I'm like, this is a great time to go get a therapist. Here's some signs that you could benefit from therapy. You feel an overwhelming sense of helplessness and sadness. Your problems don't seem to get better despite your efforts and help from family and friends. You have problems with concentration. You worry excessively, constantly on edge, like it just won't go away. And then some of your actions and how you're coping with your feelings. Are you choosing unhealthy things that maybe you didn't use in the past? So unhealthy coping mechanisms, right? There's that change in people's behaviors. And what are they doing now that they didn't used to do, especially if it's something harmful? So this was the short list, right? So I'm put it up there again. If you think that, you or someone you love or care about, may be depressed, these are some things that we can look at. We need to look at the physical body. We need to put a little exercise, some movement in their life. Let's take a look at their sleep, hydration, what kind of support systems do they have? And do we need to add therapy into their life? And remembering that therapy, like I said, sometimes I see someone for a couple sessions, we dig down on that issue and it seems to resolve itself and they're good. And then they have my name for the next time something comes up that they don't feel that they want to, deal with alone. This is going to be our discussion and question period. That's a little slide for that, but I also want to put some other things up here. These are phone numbers. This Hawaii Cares is new right now. I'm trying to remember what it used to be called. I just learned of something recently. It was only last month. There's something called warm lines. Warm lines, they're different than hotlines, right? Like you see the Oahu suicide hotline, that would be like more of a crisis. That's a hotline. Warm lines, sometimes we're not in a crisis, but we really could still use a 10-minute, 30-minute conversation with someone. And Hawaii Cares has some. I've had clients who found some on the mainland. And they all have their different rules. Some are, you can talk to someone for 10 minutes. Some are, you can talk once a week for half an hour. And it's not necessarily therapy. It's just that connection with another person. So there's some numbers there. I can put this back up if you want again, but I also want you to know who we are. We're the Samaritan Counseling Center. And this is our information: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. There's our phone number and our email address. And, I'm open for questions, discussion. If you need me to go back to another slide, I'm perfectly happy to do that.